Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our continued study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will continue with the third canto, 10th chapter, and today we are on verse number 13. Oh, that's a short one. Okay. Yate danim tatagrecha paschad apyetad idrisham. Yate danim tatagrecha paschad apyetad idrisham. Please chant.
Yate danim tatagre cha paschat apyetad idrisham.
Yate danim tata grecha pashat apyatit idrisham. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Athedanim tathegracha paschadapi etad idrisham. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yate danim tathagre cha paschad apya etad idrisham. Hare Krishna.
तथेदानी तथाग्रे च पश्चादप्येतदीदृशम्.
Okay, anyone else? Yata, as it is. Idanim, at present. Tata, so it was. Agre, in the beginning. Cha, and. Paschat, at the end. Api, also. Etad idrisham, it continues to be the same. Translation by Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The cosmic manifestation is as it is now. It was the same in the past, and it will continue the same way in the future. Purport. There is a systematic Bhutagramam imam kritsnam avasham prakrtir vashat. As it is created now, and as it will be destroyed later on, so also it existed in the past, and again will be created, maintained, and destroyed in due course of time. Therefore, the systematic activities of the time factor are perpetual and eternal, and cannot be stated to be false. The manifestation is temporary and occasional, but it is not false as claimed by the Mayavadi philosophers. Translation again. This cosmic manifestation is as it is now. It was the same in the past, and it will continue in the same way in the future. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya. Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Vicharne Nirvishesha Shunyabari Paschati Deshatane Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Mira Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Good morning. So today we're going to talk about natural order, the laws of nature. Whether we understand it or not, there is a natural order that is established and that we can work within. We can't work outside of it. We try, but we're never successful. So the natural order, of course, is established by God, by Krishna. And that's what we're going to talk about today, universal order. So although the cosmic manifestation is created and destroyed an infinite number of times, over and over and over, it always follows the same guidelines. Whatever is going on now is the same as in the past, and it will continue the same way in the future. And of course, we know that this is cyclic, right? It starts out pretty good, gradually gets worse. It becomes almost recognizable, falls apart, and after a period of rest, it gets rebuilt. And the cycle repeats itself perpetually. So some of us might ponder at this point, why can't the material world just remain like it was in Satya Yuga at the beginning, right? Where everything was sort of like designed in a very particular way. Everything went nicely. That wouldn't be so bad, right? Why do we have to devolve into less than animal-like behavior and then destroy a peaceful society, right? And the answer to that is that, and it shouldn't be a surprise, although the natural order was established in the beginning and things went fairly smoothly over time, people in general cared less about truly understanding its actual purpose, enjoying it and exploiting it, and becoming envious when others were enjoying and exploiting more successfully than us. So in time, we eventually reach Kali Yuga, where everything is chaotic, and it's rare to find someone who actually wants to understand why it's all happening. And then, of course, at the end of Kali Yuga, things get so bad that they no longer honor those limits of the laws of nature. And so it is demolished and rebuilt to give everyone another chance at actual success. So the reason that we can't just have Satya Yuga always is that we collectively cannot maintain the Satya Yuga mentality, right? Those who can individually maintain that mentality, they take their next births in a Satya Yuga in another universe. But each universe follows this cyclic decay and reconstruction because gradually society as a whole becomes more interested in serving their senses than following this natural order that's established by God. All right, so let's get back to that subject then, natural order. So there's a lot of debate. Sorry about that. There's a lot of debates about natural order and the laws of nature, how to understand them. Some even debate on whether they even actually exist or not. So on one hand, we can all experience it, right? We can experience the laws of nature. We understand limitations. We can observe it. We can play around with it. We can test its limits, that sort of thing. But if we want to actually understand it, to really understand it, it has to be done in a proper way. And when I say understand, I don't mean things like, don't touch fire with your bare hands, or don't try to breathe underwater without specialized equipment. Those are things that we learn along the way, but it isn't really understanding the natural law. It just means that knowing some of our limits within natural law, right? But setting aside these observable and verifiable limits, it is important for us to understand why there are limits, more importantly, where they come from, and then also how to overcome them, right? And this is where most people get into trouble, because we all want to overcome nature's laws. We don't much like restriction. But the way we go about trying to overcome them, that determines what our nature is and whether we'll be successful or not in overcoming those laws. So if we take the time and put in the effort to understand it properly, and that example is shown by Lord Brahma, right? He actually put the time and effort into taking himself out of the center, putting Krishna in there, and then understanding properly what is to be done. Then the truth will be revealed to us, and we can act appropriately within this material world, and then, more importantly, successfully navigate out of the material world. But if we just go at it whimsically and try to rely on our obviously faulty senses and our flawed intellect, we will remain in illusion and eventually assume that there is nothing more than this, and thus we'll just try to make the best out of a bad bargain. Now, this topic, this idea of basically there being two options, we can try to understand the truth by approaching an authority in a proper way, going through the proper channels, and the truth being revealed to us when we become worthy recipients. Or just trying to work it out on our own and seeing how that turns out. This topic comes up over and over in many ways. So here we're talking about Lord Brahma, of course, and we understood that when he tried to figure it out all by himself, even with his four heads and his superior intellect, he couldn't. But when he performed the tapasya that he was instructed to do by the unembodied voice, he was able to actually understand from Lord Vishnu what his duty is, what is actually to be done. So, and the conclusion, every time it comes up, is always that if we approach the subject with the proper mood and etiquette and consult authorized representatives, we will achieve success. But if we instead consider our own wealth of life experience and intellectual prowess a more authoritative way to navigate through the material world, not only will we remain here in the material world, but we'll get more and more lost, right? We'll get more and more entangled. In trying to get out, we're going to get more entangled. It's like quicksand, right? If you rely on your initial intuition, is just fight your way out of it, you actually get sucked under. But if you pay attention to what the laws of quicksand are, and if you become educated on it, then you can actually get your way out of it. So not only, though, will we become more and more lost and more entangled in the material world, so we're not only affecting ourselves, but we're also creating unnecessary disturbances within society in general, right? So we're not just wasting our own time and lives, we're influencing others to do the same. Or at the very least, we're distracting them from doing what is right. So here are a few places in our Shastra that this concept comes up. And like I said, it comes up over and over and over again. There's so many more. In time, as we go through the Shastra, it becomes evident to us that this is the principal topic around which various details are trying to bring us to, right? Srila Prabhupada named his movement the International Society for Krishna Consciousness because generally here in the material world, we are engaged in self-consciousness. We see ourselves as the center, the controllers, the enjoyers. And this science of self-realization, this process of Krishna consciousness, means understanding that we're not the center, Krishna is the center, and how we are to properly act in that relationship with Krishna as the center and with us as the servants. So this is the principal topic around which various details are trying to bring us to understand. So one of these incidences, and this is an important one, and I bring this up often, but it's important to understand. It's chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, and that is it talks about the divine and the demonic natures. So in that chapter, Krishna breaks down and lists the qualities and mentalities of those who are divine and those who are demonic. It's a great read, that chapter. I recommend it regularly to remind us of what we're doing, and also to sort of understand, oh, actually, when we're reading through the descriptions, we actually start to see, oh, I have actually many of these demonic tendencies, so I should do something. I should do something about that, right? And then we read about the divine ones, and we think, okay, I can certainly do a whole lot better with those. So anyway, very good read. But in his purport to verse 6, so Krishna just breaks it down the entire chapter, right? But in his purport to verse 6, Srila Prabhupada makes it clear what the exclusive criterion is that causes this distinction between divine and demonic. Let's see, and that is, so I'm just going to read the purport from Bhagavad Gita 16:6. So Srila Prabhupada writes, or I'll read the translation first, and then we'll do the purport. So first, Krishna is addressing Arjuna. He says, O son of Pritha, in this world there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine, and the other demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities, which is that first group of verses. I think it's 1 through 4. Now hear from me of the demonic. So here's what Srila Prabhupada says. Lord Krishna, having assured Arjuna that he was born with the divine qualities, is now describing the demoniac way. That is to say, they abide by the injunctions in scriptures and by the authorities. One should perform duties in the light of authoritative scripture. This mentality is called divine. One who does not follow the regulative principles as they are laid down in the scriptures and who acts according to his whims is called demonic or asuric. There is no other criterion but obedience to the regulative principles of scriptures. I'm going to read those last two sentences again. They're very important. One who does not follow the regulative principles as they are laid down in the scriptures and who acts according to his whims is called demoniac or asuric. There is no other criterion but obedience to the regulative principles of scriptures. So if we're following the scripture, then we are acting with the divine nature. If we are not following scripture, if we're just acting according to whims, then we are following the demonic or asuric nature. Srila Prabhupada concludes, it is mentioned in Vedic literature that both the demigods and the demons are born of the Prajapati. The only difference is that one class obeys the Vedic injunctions and the other does not, right? So this is the determining the divine obey the injunctions and the demonic do not, right? So, and that last sentence of Srila Prabhupada's purport, it brings me to the next example. that I want to talk about. And that's from the middle of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Where we learn that mere theoretical acceptance of the Supreme Lord, but not acting accordingly at all times, can actually turn the whole world upside down, right? Of course, I'm talking about the pastime of. So the middle of the 6th canto, there's several pastimes in a row. First, we have Lord Indra, and Brihaspati walked into the assembly, the spiritual master of the demigods, and Indra and company were too busy enjoying materially to give proper respect to their guru. And so Brihaspati, in order to teach them a lesson, he left, right? We should understand that the spiritual master saying he's very important to us is a huge understatement. The way Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur put it, and the way that Srila Prabhupada followed it, and many acharyas before, are that the instructions of the. Sorry about that. I was connected with data, but now it wants to connect to the Wi-Fi, so it looks like we disconnected for a bit. Where did I cut off? Maybe I didn't cut off.
You did cut off a little bit, Prabhu, but we have good connection now. So
Okay.
We only missed a couple of seconds of you.
Okay. What was I talking about when we cut off?
You were talking of Indra and Brihaspati.
Okay. So because Indra breached Vedic etiquette because he didn't honor properly his spiritual master, Brihaspati, in order to teach him a lesson, he left. And then sorry, I was trying to show the importance of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master is not just a very important thing to us; he is the important thing. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, as well as the way Srila Prabhupada lived his life, showed, and the previous charts showed, that the orders of the spiritual master are actually one's life and soul. So it is the important thing in our life. It's not just an important aspect in our life that it's nice to have him around, especially during holidays or something like that. That's not how we should view a spiritual master. We should understand that relationship very deeply, and we should take it seriously. So Indra, for our benefit, shows us that even though we may have accepted the divine qualities, right? For the most part, we accept Vedic authority and we're following it. If we periodically breach that etiquette, we can lose absolutely everything, right? So we saw that what happened was when Brihaspati left, the demons, who were actually obeying the orders of their spiritual master, right? Their spiritual master understood, okay, you guys have a window, you can take over everything, right? And they did. The demons, when I said it can actually turn the whole world upside down, it actually meant it, because the demons were actually, they overthrew Indra, and they were actually ruling the whole universe, right? So it's very chaotic. So of course, Indra then, being advised by Lord Brahma to, actually accept another guru and give him proper respect, they approach Vishvarup. And under Vishvarup's instruction, they were able to defeat the demons using the Narayan Kavacha, right? So thanks to Vishvarup, they were able to then regain their heavenly position by again embracing Vedic culture. But Indra, again, due to his whimsical nature, he committed a severe offense to Vishvarup, right? Their new guru, because he suspected that Vishvarup was he was also showing favor to the demons. Obviously, he was doing his job for the demigods. He was able to get them their kingdom back. But since he was also, because he's family to both, he was also being kind to the demons, not in an unfair way. But anyway, Indra, he didn't like this, so he actually beheaded Vishvarup, his guru, right? So again, they became overpowered by the demons. Again, they breached that etiquette. This time in a one would say a more severe way. So again, the demigods had to get back in line with the Vedic culture, and then due to a sacrifice of a very powerful Brahmana, Indra now had a weapon that was surcharged with the potency of the Supreme Lord, specifically designed to regain control. And even with all that, Indra, again, he fumbled that a little bit too, right? He was using that specific thunderbolt, and he had some success, but Virtusor knocked it out of his hands, and he was a little too proud to pick it back up, so he's starting to use his own weapon. And Virtusor, he had to tell him, no, what are you doing? That is the weapon right there. Pick it back up. That's the only way that you can get. That is the one that's surcharged by the Supreme Lord, specifically made for this purpose, right? So Indra's fault, again, for our benefit in that circumstance, is that anytime he felt that he had the upper hand, he would again just consider himself powerful, right? Not fully understanding that the power that's within him was actually coming from Krishna and going through him, because he was using these divine things, these blessed things. So not fully understanding, again, for our benefit, the power, that all this power is always coming from Krishna. And that the fact that those who are connected to Krishna can be the conduits for that power, if we actually understand how to receive it. Since he didn't have a full, for our benefit, didn't have a full grasp of that, he would consider himself powerful, and again, he would try to rely on his own prowess to fight this demon, right? So I'm going to read something here. This is an excerpt of, it's actually a paraphrase of something. So I'm going to read something, and maybe somebody can tell me who's speaking here. Okay. It says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of victory and defeat. Not knowing that the Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes, fools and rascals try to take credit for victory or defeat themselves. But everything is actually under the control of the Lord. No one but him, the Supreme Lord, has any independence. The Purusha, enjoyer, and Prakriti, the enjoyed, are under the control of the Lord. For it is by his supervision that everything works systematically. Not seeing the hand of the Supreme in every action, a fool considers himself the ruler and controller of everything. When one understands, however, that the real controller is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is freed from the relativities of the world, such as distress, happiness, fear, and impurity. Who knows who spoke such accurate philosophical words? Does anyone recognize? that little speech. Yeah, go ahead.
Srila Prabhupada?
Well, it's Srila Prabhupada who is quoting the person who's actually speaking it. You probably got that from Fools and Rascals, because Srila Prabhupada says Fools and Rascals a lot. But yeah, he's paraphrasing the statement of someone, and that someone is Vritrasur, the so-called demon. This was Vritrasur talking to Indra, right? So sometimes the so-called demons, of course, we know Vritrasur, his background. Sometimes the so-called demons, or those who we accept as demons, know the philosophy better than devotees. Actually, there's another great when in the seventh canto, right after Hiranyakashipu, did the funeral pyre for Hiranyaksha, and he's pacifying his grieving relatives. He speaks such wonderful philosophy about the temporary nature of the material body and the eternal nature of the soul. It's amazing. So sometimes you get these, demons that they understand these aspects, and they can actually sometimes even preach them to the so-called devotees in some circumstances. So that was Vritrasur. So I think we all know how that pastime turns out. Indra again understands, okay, yes, all prowess comes from Krishna independently. And so my service as the King of Heaven, appointed by the Supreme Lord, is to take the order of the Supreme Lord as my life and soul and do accordingly, right? So thanks to the wonderful preaching of the demon Vritrasur, Indra understood his actual position and again relied on Krishna instead of relying on himself. All right, so I want to read one more verse and purport. Again, although we could do this all day to show different examples of how this is a recurring theme. This is from the fourth canto, 18th chapter, verse 5. A foolish person who manufactures his own ways and means through mental speculation and does not recognize the authority of the sages who lay down unimpeachable directions is simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. And Srila Prabhupada's purport is this. At the present moment, it has become fashionable to disobey the unimpeachable directions given by the acharyas and liberated souls of the past. This is a very important sentence. It's always fashionable for some people, at least, to disobey the unimpeachable directions of the acharyas. What's disturbingly becoming fashionable these days are so-called spiritualists who are obeying the unimpeachable directions given by the art. They're actually trying to say that times have changed. This advice or these instructions are no longer applicable to the current situation. But as the Taylor says, whatever is going on now, it was going on before, it will continue to go on in the future. We have to follow the laws of nature that are established by Krishna. And the way to do this is to approach someone who knows those laws of nature, right? A bona fide spiritual master. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively, right? Don't just demand the truth. No, inquire submissively and render service unto him to show that that you are appreciative of what he's about to reveal to you, to show that you're willing to give up something, some sort of service that you're willing to do. And then the self-realized truth, they can impart this knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. They have tattva darshana. They've actually seen it. It's not that they understand it, they can repeat it. That's there. but they've actually seen it. They've experienced it, right? And this is why they can. So, and this is the system. But, so we'll go back to Srila Prabhupada's before. So it has become fashionable to disobey the unimpeachable directions given by the acharyas, liberated souls of the past. Srila Prabhupada continues, presently, people are so fallen that they cannot distinguish between a liberated soul and a conditioned soul. A conditioned soul is hampered by 4 defects. He is sure to commit mistakes. He is sure to become illusioned. He has a tendency to cheat others, and his senses are imperfect. Consequently, we have to take direction from liberated persons. This Krishna consciousness movement directly receives instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by way of persons who are strictly following his instructions. Although a follower may not be a liberated person, if he follows the Supreme Liberated Personality of Godhead, his actions are naturally liberated from the contamination of the material nature. Lord Chaitanya therefore says, by my order, you may become a spiritual master. One can immediately become a spiritual master. How? By having full faith in the transcendental words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by following his instructions. Simple as that. Having full faith in those words and by actually following those instructions. Not just instructions or repeating them. Materialistic men are not interested in taking directions from a liberated person, but they are very much interested in their own concocted ideas, which make them repeatedly fail in their attempts. Because the entire world is now following the imperfect direction of the conditioned souls, humanity is completely bewildered, right? So thus, this is why the cycle has to happen from Satya Yuga and down to Kali Yuga, is because over time, people become more and more greedy. They rely more and more on their imperfect senses, and they become more and more bewildered. And of course, we'll give one more, because our beloved Srila Rupa Goswami also points out that even when we're attempting to do devotional service, if we're not adhering to the authorized scriptures, Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Adi, Pancharatra, Vidimvira, then we will be causing unnecessary disturbances in society, despite our best intentions and despite our material qualifications, right? If we're trying to engage in any activity, but even specifically devotional service, if we're doing that without actually adhering to the Vedas, it's going to cause unnecessary disturbances. And we see that by the occasional example of Indra, right? And so we shouldn't take that lightly. We should understand that even someone who is actually because these devatas aren't just appointed whimsically. Again, there's natural order, right? These are qualified personalities. And when there's not a qualified personality, Lord Krishna expands himself to fill that position, right? So it's not that Indra is a complete rascal. Indra knows what's going on, but occasionally, because things go so well for him, he occasionally thinks that he can rely on his own prowess, right? And sets aside this, this principle of no, all power is coming from Krishna. You could just be a conduit, but you actually have to be a recipient. You can't just, since it's like, the iron's in the fire and, oh yeah, it's become nicer, but you take it out of the fire after a while. Sure. At first it still has that heat, but after a while it cools down and now it's just iron, so we have to keep in contact with that in order to possess, because we are not the energetic, we are just energy. So we have to remain in contact with the energetic in order to keep that potency. Yes. So Rupa Goswami. So to conclude, what do we take away from all of this? So everything that happens under Krishna's established order. and there's nothing new under the sun, right? So we're not in some unique circumstance where the Shastra has somehow become irrelevant or antiquated. So if we really want to know the absolute truth, we have to understand and follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra relentlessly, not just occasionally, right? Just having access to the Shastra, showing it respect as we walk by it on our bookshelf, right? Paying lip service to it. People ask us what our favorite book is. Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. Bhagavad Purana, the spotless Purana, Amala, right? If we're not actually following it in our every thought, word, and action, it means that we don't actually understand it, right? And that means that the divine potency will not be flowing through us, right? And if the divine potency is not flowing through us, that means the demonic potency will surely thrive within us, right? Both of these potentials are there. And as Srila Prabhupada so eloquently pointed out in his purport to 16.6, which we read, one who does not follow the regulative principles as they are laid down in the scriptures, and who acts according to his whims is called demoniac or asuric. There is no other criterion but obedience to the regulative principles of scriptures, right? So that's it. Either we're adhering to the regulative principles of scripture, and as such, since we're basing all of our thoughts, words, and actions on Krishna's words, we become conduits for Krishna, and therefore the behavior is divine, not because of our own prowess, but because we're connected to the divine prowess. But whenever we're relying on our own whim or our own imperfect senses or intellect, which is one of the imperfect senses, then this demoniac nature is actually showing up. So it's whether or not we're actually following the regulative principles of scriptures. So we all come from the same place, and each of us has this potential for both of these natures, divine and demonic. But what sets us apart from one another is whether or not we obey the regulative principles of scriptures. So Lord Brahma, bringing it back to today's context, he couldn't understand the laws of nature until he performed tapasya, and that was instructed by the Supreme Lord. And neither can we. We can't rely on our imperfect senses. We need authorized guidance. We need to pay close attention, and we need to respect. We need to have the proper respect to actually receive that authorized guidance, right? So the more we adhere to Shastra, the more we're in touch with that divine nature, and the more Krishna will reveal to us to further understand that divine nature. But the more we try to rely on our own whim or logic or, just our own ideas of how the world should be, the more we go down the other path. And again, read 16th chapter often, and we will see, we will recognize, okay, this is where I have some room in my life for improvement. And Krishna will always guide us from within. And of course, we have the spiritual master from without. So let's stop there and see if there are any questions or comments or additions. Anyone? Yes, Vishnu Gadaprabhu, you have your hand up, please.
I do. Thank you. Thank you,
Respectful
Chaitanya Prabhu. So that's it. It's interesting about following the dictates of the Shastra. Of course, with the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was confused about he was quoting all these different Shastric things about not killing his superiors and so many things.
Yeah.
So to understand, what the Shastric requirements and directions are, And that as you pointed out nicely, that takes the guidance of the spiritual authority. And even the example of Indra not respecting Brihaspati, well, there is a shastric reference that a person, a king or a president in their, sitting on the throne or in their capacity, uh, they don't have to give respect to others, nobody else. But Prabhupada comments in the purport that the higher principle is that even a king who's sitting on the throne or president, whatever, they have to offer respect to Brahmins, Vaishnava superiors. So that illustrates your point very nicely. And,
Yes.
yeah, I thought that's quite.
Yeah, third chapter of Gita also shows that 20 and 21 how these great leaders, they also follow this, because if they don't, then others will follow their example of not, showing this etiquette. Oh, yes. And then I think, was that Acharya Prabhu just put in the chat Rama Harshana Sutta? Yeah, there's another example where Brahma Harshana Sutta Goswami's father, he breached etiquette. Lord Balaram, when he was on pilgrimage, he entered an assembly and Brahma Harshana Sutta didn't stand. It seems like a small breach of etiquette, but Lord Balaram actually killed him with kusha grass. He stabbed him. So we have to understand that there are consequences to not following the culture. And although we can find some seeming loopholes where, oh, well, actually, technically, it's not required, right? No, there is a higher principle, as Vishnu Prabhu pointed out. And he's pointing out that Srila Prabhupada pointed it out. There's this higher principle that it's the most important thing for us. And even if we're in a high position where we technically don't have to, or in a situation or a circumstance where it's technically not required, we do it anyway to show the world that actually that's more important. Sure, court is important, holding court, and so it's not absolutely necessary, but it shows the proper example, and that's what we should always do.
A devotee asked me the question just the other day, that the spiritual master came by and he was busy doing stuff, some other kind of service, and he forgot to offer respects at that time. And was that the same offense as Indra? So, I had some comment. What would you say?
Well, it depends on the consciousness, really. What was your comment? I want to hear that.
Yeah, exactly what I said. You're exactly what I said. I mean, Indra, Brihaspati, he understood that Indra, because he was puffed up, it wasn't just he was distracted. It was he was puffed up by his position, and therefore, and what he could have explained to him in detail. This is not what you do, but he didn't do that. He left. And that was his attempt to teach Indra what and Indra, to his credit, after Brihaspati left, after Brihaspati left, he immediately understood. Oh, I was an offender. He immediately understood. So he was like you pointed out, Indra wasn't a slouch, but he occasionally gets misguided because he's got his position, being in a big position. And oftentimes, even us with a little position, we sometimes get misguided and get carried away by our power and our position. So, but he immediately understood and tried to rectify the situation, but it was a little bit late.
Yeah. To his credit, and that's his nature. He always quickly understands his faults.
Thank you.
And and again, that's more for us to learn from, because we in our little positions think that we're indestructible. We can't be affected by material nature. But if we read the 16th chapter of Gita, we see actually how much we are influenced by that other nature. We don't even want to admit it, but we most certainly are. And so, if someone in the position of Indra can briefly have that problem and overcome it, that's the other part, is that it's something that can be overcome, right? If we actually follow properly. And that's the important part for us to understand. Is there anything else? Thank you for that, Vishnu-Guru Prabhu.
Oh, one other thing is that you were talking about intuition, and of course you made the point, but so that intuition, sometimes it's we just have to check it out. Sometimes it's very valuable thing, but not just in and of itself. We check it out with what the spiritual master's order is and what the Shastra says.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that we don't use our senses, which are imperfect. We still are using them, but we're using them in line with Shastra. So we spiritualize everything that we use properly. So if we use our senses in Krishna's service, all of them, mind, intelligence, and eventually ego, properly, then everything becomes purified. So yeah, it's not that, and I know people like this who, not in ISKCON, but outside, they have deep faith in something, but they don't have much knowledge. And so anytime they need to make a decision, they go to their, I'll just say, spiritual authority, and they're looking for something in scripture that tells them what to do. And I'm talking things like, is it okay for me to buy this outfit, or is it okay to style my hair in a certain way? Which, there are some guidelines for that sort of thing in Shastra, but they're looking for like detailed things. So sometimes we have to, take what we know from Shastra and apply it, but we have to be very careful when we do that. And especially we should do it under the orders of the spiritual master, because otherwise the mind has a tendency, the mind's very tricky. The mind knows that we simultaneously appreciate Vaishnava culture, but still want to enjoy material nature. So the mind has this way of saying, oh, you can do this. And just like it's mentioned there in Shastra, there's, it's okay, right? And it gives us justifications. So if we're just trying to learn Shastra on our own, we're going to be carried away by the mind. And that's that. So it's very important for us to approach those who have actually seen the truth, and then they can reveal it to us. Okay. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
All right.
Your classes are always, I come to these classes thinking I will get my answers, but then I feel it gets even more difficult.
More questions. I confuse people. I'm sorry. All right.
It's, when you were saying we must take our guidance from our spiritual masters. So I went to my guru with a question. He gave me an answer, and I'm trying my best to follow it. But I feel like going back to him again and asking. It's almost like I'm worrying that I'm wanting him to give me the answer I want to hear.
Mm.
It's still a struggle, still struggling with it. And how much do I bother him? How much do I,
If we have doubts, it's okay to clarify something with the spiritual master. But what I've made a habit of when I approach my own spiritual master, because he's made it clear in his actions and in his words that if a disciple goes to him and they actually he knows they want a specific outcome, in order for them to not commit the offense of disobeying the orders of the spiritual master, he'll just let them do whatever they're asking, right? If he knows they're attached. So it's become a habit of mine, knowing that, to give a little bit, it doesn't need to be a lot, but to give a little bit of explanation, saying, look, I'm a little unclear on this, and just so you know, I am absolutely not attached one way or the other. I just just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, because it always comes down to the consciousness. It's not actually the detail, right? The detail can be done, even if it's an imperfect detail, if it's done with the right consciousness, then you're going to make advancement. It's going to be clarified in time. If you're doing the right, so-called right detail with the improper consciousness, it's not going to give you clarity. So if we let the spiritual master know that that is actually the most important thing for us, but we're still a little unclear on what to do, then he will clarify it for us. It's not a bother, because it's something that's on our mind and that we want clarity for. But we should make sure that, like you mentioned, we should make sure that we're not just asking, it's like you ask your mom for something, she says no, so then you go ask your dad because you really want to do it, right? And then he says yes. So we want to make sure it's not like that it's just our mind telling us, oh no, but what if you ask him this way and you quote some Shastra? Because Arjuna tried that too, as Vishnu-Gada Prabhu pointed out. He's quoting Shastra to say why he shouldn't follow Krishna's instructions. Why I shouldn't fight, because there's so many reasons. And he's doing that. And so our mind does that too. When we know what the right thing to do is, but we also sort of, well, yeah, but I still want to enjoy. So let me, right. So we do that. And then but it's disguised as philosophical, deep, understanding. And so we try to justify our shortcomings with Shastra. We do that. So if we know that that's our tendency, and sometimes we can just understand what the spiritual masters, if we reflect on it, but if you need further clarification, by all means, approach him for that. But my advice, and the habit that I put myself in, like I said, is to make sure that we're letting the spiritual master know that I'm not trying to, get out of doing devotional service. I just want to understand properly how I'm supposed to do it, right? And that tends to help. The spiritual master knows, though. They know our intention. Just like Dhruva, when he was finally asked, okay, what do you want as your benediction? He didn't want anything anymore. He just wanted to engage in the Lord's service. He felt ashamed that what brought him to worship the Lord, to actually gain his darshan, was a material motivation. He regretted that. And he didn't ask for anything, but the Lord knew what he wanted, what his intention was. So he granted him that, right? So that's why Dhruva Loka is there, higher than even Brahma Loka. So either way, if our consciousness isn't clear, we're going to get a mixed answer. But the more we pray for that actual sincerity to understand what Krishna wants us to do, and the more we make those hard decisions when we know that we should be doing something, but we want to be doing something else, when we make those hard decisions to stick with, okay, this is what's given a shot, and this is what I know I'm supposed to do, this is what the spiritual master instructed me to do. When we do that enough times, then the clarity really starts to, everything just starts to reveal itself. And this is how our process goes. But in order to do that, we need to have proper respect for the spiritual master. When we're inquiring, we have to do it in a submissive way. We have to show them that we're that of the importance of those instructions, that we're that we want to reciprocate that transference of knowledge by rendering service, like that. So we follow the process. It works. To whatever extent that we're following it, it works. And to whatever extent we're not following it, then, that other tendency is there. So we shouldn't assume that we are divine, because we at least understand in theory that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and he's in control. Now, if we're acting according to our whims, we are implying that, no, Krishna, you're not the Supreme Lord. My whims are much more valuable than your unimpeachable instructions and the ones that are given by the Shastra, right? So we just have to keep all of that in mind. So yeah, no, if you need further clarity, yes, by all means, approach your spiritual master again, but just be sure it's in the right mood. And if it's in the right mood and you have the right consciousness, then you can't lose. I don't know if that helped. Did that give you more questions?
Of course it did. But thank
Good.
you very much, Prabhu. Yeah,
Good.
no, it does.
There should be more questions. That's the
There
thing.
should,
The
yeah, definitely.
clearer it becomes, the more confusing it is, because then we realize, oh man, I've been so much lost in all this. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, no more questions, and also getting harder. Yeah, I think it was nice and easy when I was nice and ignorant. Just, but
Ignorance is bliss.
ignorance is bliss. But as we learn more, we realize, but no, your answer was helpful, and I will let it sink in and, think about it and figure out how to go forward, because I need to go forward.
Yes, yes. It's difficult, and we're all doing it. We want to accept Krishna's mercy. We like it. We see it, and we want it, and we grab it. But we fail to let go of the materialness. We're holding on to both, and we're, being pulled in both directions. And that's the issue. And so if we actually see that, we understand it, we acknowledge it, and we gradually try to understand things as they are, because the things that we're attached to, sorry about that, the things that we're attached to in material nature, the reason that we're attached to them is because Krishna's potency is in them, but we're just seeing them as how they serve us instead of how we are meant to use them in Krishna's service. So once we're able to understand that, then all of these attachments become. Oh, I'll read one more quote. I read it a lot, actually. This is, nope, that's not the one. Nope. Do I not have it up here? Oh yeah, 1:5:34. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which cause his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. So even those things that we're materially attached to, if we, through Shastra, can understand Krishna's potency in them and then use them in the proper way instead of the improper way to serve our senses, use them in the proper way to serve Krishna, those things that once caused our perpetual bondage, they become the destroyer of the tree of work, right? And then we're no longer in the material world. So this is the goal, and that's how it's achieved, through following the orders of the spiritual master, through sincerity, dedication. Okay, is there anything else?
A great class and great conversation and discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dronacharya Prabhu. I always enjoy the discussion at the end when there is some. Okay. So it looks like we can stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Kalpatarभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः.
Sorry for all the technical difficulties in the car and all that, but somehow Krishna wanted it to happen this way.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice class.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.